The PrettyRoutesPro plugin is pretty basic as far as what is added to your admin when you upload the plugin and activate it. What you're going to see is a Pretty Routes tab, and below that you'll see a section called Routes and Routes Maps, or Route Maps. The Routes section, of course, is a library of all the routes that you have created thus far, which will be blank by default, of course. The Route Maps are the map settings, which can vary depending on how you want your map to display. So we'll start with the Route Map section. What you're going to do at first is create Add New, but I've already created one, but I will walk you through the process. Let's just add a new one. Let's call it Route Demo, and I'm just going to walk you through these basic settings so you know what's going on when you see this page. Now, there's just a couple things you need to know when you're setting up your map for Pretty Routes. The first is you need to specify the center mode, and this is telling Pretty Routes how to display your map. So automatically, the auto setting, is going to display every route that you've added to the map. So if you added routes in California and you've added routes up in Maine, the map by default is going to display all of the United States. It will zoom out just far enough so that all of your routes are contained within the map. That makes it kind of easy to showcase all your maps, or all your routes. If the routes are closer down in the city level, it's going to zoom down into that city and show full screen routes in that case. Now, set to manual essentially lets you specify the exact location where you want your map to show by default. Now, this is good if you have a lot of routes. Say if they go off screen, but you want to showcase a specific starting point or a specific area that doesn't necessarily capture all of the routes. So all you have to do is enter a location. I had Dayton, Ohio entered previously. You click Find, and then you set your zoom level, and this is what zoom level is going to display on the front end of your site by default when a visitor visits your page. So after all these settings are done, you'll simply click Publish, and your map will be ready to display and ready to be selected for your routes. After you've set up your routes map, of course, the next thing you want to do is start out adding your routes. This is pretty easy to do. You just click on the routes, and if you've already created some, they will be stored in a library that's familiar to anyone that's used WordPress. It's no different than posts or pages. We're going to click Add New for the sake of the demo to show you the step-by-step process of adding a new route and the different options that are a little bit more advanced than the basic version, if you've seen that. So first, of course, you're going to want to title it whatever you want, and the first setting you'll find is the map. Now, this is allowing you to apply the route to any map that you've created. In my case, I have Mapify Pro installed, so this means that all of my maps that I've created for Pretty Routes or Mapify Pro are selectable. This is where Pretty Routes integrates with Mapify Pro and allows you to use all of Mapify Pro's features alongside your routes. And that creates some really awesome capabilities. But for the sake of this demo and setting up Pretty Routes, you can just select the map that you've created via the Pretty Routes plugin. So first up, or second up, is the type of route you want to create. This is either road or off-road, so it's on-road or off. On-road, you would select road, and what this does is generate the route just like you would see on Google Maps. It's going to find the best, fastest route for driving that Google Maps will generate. The second option is off-road, which gets a little more interesting as it lets you plot any location on any type of terrain. So it's good for boat tours, hiking trails, bike routes, things like that don't have a road or an address associated with them. For the demo, we're going to do on-road, and just below you'll be able to select any color you want for the color of the route. This is going to be the actual route color, the line that connects all of these points. You won't see it here until after you click Publish, but it's really good feature for you know, adding a little bit of variation if you have multiple routes. A good example is, say, if you have jogging paths or hiking paths and you want to rank them by difficulty, you can select different colors for the different difficulties of these paths. You can also do, you know, a bus route versus fastest driving route, all kinds of different ways to use this color to change up different path colors for your routes. So onto the part where you actually add the route, you'll notice here that you have the full map on display, and you'll be able to locate your pinpoints, your starting points, waypoints, and endpoints by entering the address or by actually just double clicking on the map. So over here to the right you have A and B, which are your beginning and end points, and then you would add waypoints by selecting this option in the middle. We will start at the beginning, so you will make sure A is selected, and then you're going to enter your address, which I'm doing Dayton, Ohio, as the starting point, if I could type it. Click Find. It automatically finds your starting point, and I always like to do the beginning and end first, and I will do the Columbus Airport here because I've pre-entered it. Columbus, Ohio Airport, because there's all kinds of Columbuses. So as you can see, the beginning and end points are plotted. This is the default color. Like I said, the color won't be applied until after you publish. So the next step after your beginning and end points are placed, you're going to be able to plot your waypoints. Now this is good if you want to provide different directions. Say you know a more scenic route than I-70, which I-70 is very boring. I would prefer going to 71. So what I've done is create a waypoint, and I want to zoom in so I can fine-tune it and stick on 71 instead of going off. This allows me to control the directions as needed. Now you can add up to 8 waypoints, which is actually a limitation of Google Maps. So each route you can add 8 specific waypoints. If you need more, the workaround is you just create more routes. So if I need more waypoints throughout this section of the tour, for example, I could create A and B as this length of the drive, and then create a new route and start it where this one left off. There's nothing you can really do about that without some custom coding, because that's just part of Google's limitations and a way to get them to kind of give you extra money if you want bonus features. But we provide that workaround with PrettyRoutes. So in any case, you can add as many waypoints as you want. It's really easy. You're just going to double click, and this allows you to create a completely customized tour. Now, after those, as each waypoint is added, what you're going to notice is a new section is added down here as well. These all pertain to the points on the map. So the first one is point A, the last one is point B. As you go down, you'll see waypoint number 1 is listed. Here's the from, which is A, all the waypoints, and then the to location, and then which is point B, the endpoint on your map. So for each of these settings, you can specify the pinpoint behavior. For point A, you're going to want, well, actually, let me just cover these in detail. The customization that you can add to each pinpoint. We have a little typo there, just ignore that. The option to display a pinpoint is pretty clear. You have the option to hide any waypoint, any pinpoint on the entire route. You can make it to where it's just the line, like a vector line on the map, which is good for if you want to add Mapify Pro pinpoints on top of this, like an overlay. And you can hide all the waypoints, because a lot of times it makes sense to hide the intermittent waypoints because you don't necessarily have any information, you're just controlling the path of the route. But for point A and point B, we will leave these on display, and we will enable the tooltip. The tooltip, of course, provides a little extra information on the location. So I will just call this starting point for point A, and I will have the tooltip close automatically. Your two choices for closing the tooltip are, of course, automatically, which when you hover off of it, it will close. Manually requires the user to either click a little X to close the tooltip or to hover on a different location in order to open that tooltip. So you have a couple options there. Now, for the tooltip details, this is just the information that appears within the tooltip, of course. So on hover, if you want to provide a little detail on the starting and end point, you can do that there. Now, below the first option, you're going to find the waypoint details. I'm going to hide all of these. So I'll say display pinpoint enabled tooltip to no. Everything else doesn't matter because they will be hidden at that point. And then, of course, on the endpoint, I've chosen to enable those. My tooltip will say endpoint. So a good example of what you would put in the tooltip is, distance, duration. These are automatically generated below the map. For any of your routes, you will have the distance and duration of the drive generated below the map. So sometimes I like to put that into the tooltip, which would appear below to let the user know exactly what they're in for when they're traveling. The last section you'll find on the PrettyRoutes waypoint settings is the pin image uploader. You are able to apply a unique pinpoint graphic for every waypoint beginning and end destination throughout your route. So you can have, like I said, up to 8 waypoints. Each and every one of them can have a different pinpoint graphic if you want. For the demo, I am just going to do the basic beginning and end graphics. That way, and I am choosing to hide the details for my number 1 and number 2 waypoints. So in the end, all I'll have is a graphic shown for point A and for point B. You do that just like any other image upload for WordPress. Whether through your media library or by uploading a new feature. So it kind of allows for a lot of neat combinations. You can literally say, here's the start point, here's the end point. You can showcase like coffee shops along the way, different things like that to make the route a little bit more like a tour, or to make landmarks a little bit more noticeable, things like that. So after you've set it up, your route is going to look similar to what I have here on the PrettyRoutes page. Granted, that one is running in conjunction with Mapify Pro, but a route is going to look pretty much like this, where I've set a different pinpoint for the beginning and end, and I've hidden those waypoints in the middle. You can customize them as needed, add as many as you want. They will overlap if you want. You can have all sorts of different colors. It really makes for an interesting kind of map that is really, really interactive.